Tonight, I have a privilege given few Americans, the privilege of accepting our party's nomination for President of the United States.
There was just an AP article posted that found how Senator Obama's support among hardworking Americans, white Americans, is weakening again, and how the whites in both states who had not completed college were supporting me.
Bob Kerrey, apparent attack on Obama. First it was, he says to reporters after endorsing Hillary Clinton, the fact that his name is Barack Hussein Obama, his father was a Muslim, his paternal grandmother is Muslim. So he says he means this as a compliment. Then the next day he goes on CNN and says, some people say he's the, quote, Islamic Manchurian candidate who went to a secular madrasa. Why the hell would you bring that up unless you wanted to reinforce in voters' minds this guy is a Muslim? Osama Obama, get it?
Well, that's clearly what he wants to do. This is very
You think so? There's no question.
No question, mind. This is clever and Clintonian, a way to bring down Obama.
And by the way, Hillary Clinton has been very supportive of John McCain. To a large extent, they've been up there in that treehouse that says no Barack Obama gets up here. And so that's been going on now for a while.
I have a lifetime of experience that I will bring to the White House. I know Senator McCain has a lifetime of experience that he will bring to the White House. And Senator Obama has a speech he gave in 2002.
Senator Clinton has earned great respect for her tenacity and courage. The media often overlooked how compassionately she spoke to the concerns and dreams of millions of Americans.
With profound gratitude and great humility, I accept your nomination for presidency of the United States.
Proud to be an older American woman.
Where are you from?
New York City. Hillary State. The best nominee that's possible. And the Democrats are throwing the election away. For what? An inadequate black male who would not have been running had it not been a white woman. I came here for the vote of every American. And our Democratic Party threw us down the tubes. I was a second-class citizen before, now I'm nothing. Why? Because they want to do what they want to do. And they think we won't turn and vote for McCain. Well, I got news for all of you. McCain will be the next president of the United States.
I was reading my copy of the New York Times the other day, okay? And I knew you guys would react that way, okay? So I'm reading the New York Times, though. And I was really interested to read about Barack's friends from Chicago, as the New York Times reported. Now, it turns out one of his earliest supporters is a man named Bill Ayers. And according to the New York Times, he was a domestic terrorist and part of a group that, quote, launched a campaign of bombings that would target the Pentagon and our U.S. Capitol.
As we just reported, after whipping up supporters with Obama's, quote, terrorist associations, McCain is now face-to-face with the results and is having to talk his own supporters down from the conclusions to which he has led them.
We're scared. We're scared of an Obama presidency, and I'll tell you why. I'm concerned about, someone that, cohorts with domestic terrorists such as Ayers.
First of all, I want to be president of the United States, and obviously I do not want Senator Obama to be. But I have to tell you, he is a decent person and a person that you do not have to be scared as president of the United States. Now, look, if I didn't think I wouldn't be one heck of a lot better president, I wouldn't be running, okay? And that's the point. That's the point.
I got to ask you a question. I do not I can't trust Obama. I have read about him, and he's an Arab. He is not. No
man. He's a decent family man, citizen that I just happen to have disagreements with on fundamental issues, and that's what this campaign is all about. He's not. Thank you.
Democratic presidential candidate Barack Obama is getting some rather unusual support from white nationalists who say they're going to vote for him not because they've had change of heart, but rather because they see his election as the spark needed to trigger a white uprising.
Obama going in is going to be a wake-up call for this country. There are many people that just never thought it would happen. When it finally happens, they're going to say, wait a minute, has Watts overflowed its banks? Is New Orleans now taking over the entire country? And they're going to rise up as they've never risen up before.
He and others like former Ku Klux Klan leader David Duke say Obama would be a visual aid for white Americans that they've lost control of the country.
This is a CBS News special report. I'm Katie Couric at CBS News election headquarters in New York. And we have breaking news, momentous news, really. CBS now estimates because of victories in California, Washington, Oregon, and Hawaii, CBS projects that Senator Barack Obama of Illinois will be the next president of the United States. A century and a half after the Constitution abolished slavery and guaranteed blacks the right to vote, 4 decades after the passage of the Civil Rights Act, voters have chosen our first African American president.
Yet another sign that when economic times are tough, things can get ugly. A new report suggests that right-wing extremism may be on the rise in this country. Department of Homeland Security says these groups might be using the recession and the election of the country's first African-American president as tools to recruit new members. They say there's no specific information on planned violence by domestic right-wing terrorists, but real estate foreclosures, unemployment, and tight credit could all lead to a fertile recruiting environment. There's even the possibility of confrontation between these groups and government authorities. The report says many right-wing extremists are antagonistic toward President Obama and his perceived policies on issues like immigration, expanding social programs to minorities, and restrictions on owning guns. It also points to concerns about anti-Semitism, saying that some people are blaming the loss of jobs in this country and home foreclosures on a conspiracy planned by a, quote, cabal of Jewish financial elites, unquote. The report cites lone wolves and small terrorist cells as the biggest threats because their low profile makes it hard to catch them before they do something awful. The Southern Poverty Law Center agrees that President Obama's election may have boosted membership in some of these groups, but questions the link to the economy. Meanwhile, at least one conservative radio talk show host suggests this report is meant to step on free speech and First Amendment rights, which the Department of Homeland Security, of course, denies. And it's worth noting that the Obama administration also issued a warning about left-wing extremists. That was in January.
On a steamy Sunday morning in July, a man armed with a 12-gauge shotgun burst into this church in Knoxville, Tennessee, and opened fire. Seconds later, one person lay dead, another mortally wounded, and 6 injured. Members of the congregation wrestled a 58-year-old unemployed truck driver named Jim David Atkinson to the floor and held him until police came. At first, it seemed like just another inexplicable outburst of violence, until a police news conference the next day.
It appears that what brought him to this horrible event was his lack of being able to obtain a job, his frustration over that, and his stated hatred for the liberal movement.
Why did Atkinson hate the liberal movement? Police said that he told them that all liberals should be killed because they were ruining the country, and that he felt that the Democrats had tied his country's hands in the war on terror and ruined every institution in America. Police said that Adkisson had targeted the Unitarian Universalist Church because of its liberal teachings. The church advocates social justice and tolerance, and it openly welcomes gay, lesbian, and transgendered members. According to police, Adkisson said that because he could not get to the leaders of the liberal movement, that he would target those that had voted them into office.
Members of our church were not human to him. Where did he get that? Where did he get that sense that we were not human?
Bice admits that no one knows for sure, and says that Adkisson alone is responsible for the shootings. But he keeps thinking about some books that police found in Adkisson's apartment. Books by popular right-wing talk radio personalities who berate and denigrate liberals. One of the books police found in Adkisson's apartment was Michael Savage's Liberalism is a Mental Disorder. In it, Savage calls liberals the enemy within our country, an enemy more dangerous than Hitler, traitors who are dangerous to your survival and who should be placed in a straitjacket.
America's being overrun by an invasion force from Mexico that'll soon take over the country. You psychotic liberals don't even know you're digging your own grave and throwing lime in there. So you're one of those sodomites.
Yeah.
Are you a sodomite?
Yes, I am.
Oh, you're one of the sodomites. You should only get AIDS and die, you pig. How's that? Why don't you see if you can sue me, you pig? You got nothing better than to put me down, you piece of garbage? You got nothing to do today? Go eat a sausage and choke on it. Get trichinosis.
A suspected DUI traffic stop on Sunday led to a trunk full of evidence and the arrests of 4 people, all possibly connected to a plot to kill Barack Obama.
As Barack Obama was to speak on Thursday, was someone planning to shoot him? Investigators are questioning Theron Gartrell, originally pulled over in Aurora, Colorado on suspicion of DUI. But in his trunk, police found 2 high-powered rifles, a scope, and ammo, along with a bulletproof vest, camouflage clothes, 2 wigs, walkie-talkies, and drugs. 3 hours later, police also arrested Nathan Johnson. In an interview with Denver affiliate KCNC, Johnson, a meth abuser, admitted Gartrell and Sean Adolph, a third man under arrest, talked about shooting Obama.
He had said at one point that yes, it would be probably on the day of his acceptance speech. I did say that, and I did say it would be from a high vantage point and with the named rifle.
Johnson insists he had nothing to do with it, but admits his 2 friends had racist attitudes toward Obama.
Obama don't belong in office. He's black. His name is too much like Osama and Obama.
Local detectives will only say federal investigators are looking hard at all the red flags.
Before Cummings was killed in a domestic violence altercation in 2008, he was preparing an attack on newly elected President Obama with what? A dirty bomb. Well, Cummings' wife is quoted as saying his intentions were to construct a dirty bomb and take it to Washington to kill President Obama. He was planning to hide it in the undercarriage of our motorhome. She says her husband had practiced crossing checkpoints with dangerous materials aboard, taking her and her daughter along for an image of innocence.
We begin with the reported murder plot against Obama, and NBC's Chief Justice Department correspondent Pete Williams, who's here in Washington.
These were 2 young men, ages 20 and 18, both of whom considered themselves to be neo-Nazis. They had swastikas painted on their car and other Nazi symbols. They met on the internet, where they apparently discussed a range of plans. They would target a predominantly African-American school, going state to state while robbing and continuing to kill people. Then they said, using a high-powered rifle, they would get in a car and drive as fast as they could toward Barack Obama while trying to shoot at him from the car windows, all while wearing white tuxedos and top hats.
No, and with that, that is up.
shot, I think, maybe in 2 places. Okay, what's your name? My name is Richard Poplowski. Okay, and where are you at? In my residence at 1016 Fairfield Street. Take care, please. Okay, hold on a minute, honey, okay? Okay, and what do you want to come out? Want to give yourself up or what? I can't give myself up because I'm laying in a pool of blood and I can't really move, but I'm done taking innocent police officers' lives. So if they would come and get me, and that would be great. What, do you have any weapons on you? I got plenty of weapons on me, but I'm not shooting any more cops because my weapons are either out of ammunition or they're disabled.
Killing babies in America. That's the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. For $5,000, Tiller, the baby killer as some call him, will perform a late-term abortion for just about any reason. You're okay with some woman being depressed, executing her child hours before it's born.
There's a lot of evidence there that he was performing illegal late-term abortions and covering up instances of child rape.
You should be very disturbed by what continues to happen in Kansas. This man, Dr. George Tiller, known as Tiller the Baby Killer, is performing late-term abortions without defining the specific medical reasons why.
Dr. George Tiller, who is one of the few doctors in the United States who performs the Hitlerian procedure known as a partial birth abortion.
Right. Tiller has killed thousands of late-term fetuses without explanation. No question Dr. Tiller has blood on his hands. Tiller, the baby killer out in Kansas, acquitted today of murdering babies. There's got to be a special place in hell for this guy.
Breaking news here on CNN. The slaying of a controversial abortion provider, George Tiller, in Kansas in broad daylight inside his own church. All we've seen of the accused murderer at this point is his getaway car as police tracked him on a Wichita interstate. That is a car right there in the center of your screen.
Did there come a point in time where your faith and your religious beliefs changed?
About 1992.
Okay. Can you tell the jury what kind of led up to your conversion, if you will?
Yes. I had been watching the 700 Club regularly, and at the end of that Christian program, at the end, they would always give an invitation to give your life to Christ. I was alone in my living room, and that day I kneeled down and I did accept Christ as my Savior at that time.
Are your feelings on abortion related in whole or in part to your religious views?
Yeah, I would say they would go hand in hand.
I am personally opposed to shooting abortionists, but I don't want to impose my moral values on others.
Okay.
A crime rooted in hate. 88-year-old James Von Brunn entered the Holocaust Museum, opening deadly fire at Stephen John's, the security guard who had let him in.
People started yelling, hit the floor, hit the floor. So my wife and 2 grandsons and I hit the floor, and we were scared to death.
Von Brunn raised his weapon again, but 2 guards fired back, shooting Von Brunn in the face. Inside the shooter's car, a note detailing his hatred of Jews, President Obama. He wrote, Obama was created by the Jews. Obama does what his Jew owners tell him what to do. On his website, more racist vitriol. He wrote, we are witnessing the calculated destruction of the white race. America is a third world racial garbage dump, stupid, ignorant, dead broke, and terminal. Today, Von Brunn's alleged crime has left an 11-year-old boy without a father, missing the man he simply adored.
He was a loving father, and he was also my hero.
We're not a third world country. We're not getting people, scientists and lawyers and doctors here, okay? We're getting the poor of the poor. We're getting third world values into a first-rate country, which is dropping all of our rates way down. No, I did not do it. It has nothing to do with it.
Murder suspects Shauna Ford and Albert Gaxiola, both pleading their innocence in the shooting deaths of 9-year-old Brisenia Flores and her father, Raul Flores. A third suspect, Jason Bush, was arrested in Kingman.
Jason Bush was in fact the shooter of all 3 of these people, under orders from Ms. Ford.
Ford is associated with the Minutemen American Defense. On their website, there's a video clip of her on PBS taking part in an immigration debate.
Most people forget about 9/11, but can any of you tell me out of the 100,000 illegal immigrants, which one of them were a terrorist?
Anybody?
Suspect Jason Bush, also reportedly associated with the group, quoted on this same website, going by the nickname Gunny, saying, quote, "My personal information is being withheld for security reasons. I am about to have a big bullseye on me, and I don't want retaliation to reach my family," end quote. A twisted turn of events. This trio is now front and center.
To just kill a 9-year-old girl because she might be a potential witness, to me, is one of the most despicable acts that I've ever heard of.
It is easy for me to hide from my emotions for one more day.
This video shows George Sedini talking about the need to work on his emotions in order to attract women. In another video, Sedini gives viewers a tour of his home.
Couch and chair, they match. The woman will really be impressed.
Despite his best efforts to impress, Sedini couldn't understand why women ignored him. Former brother-in-law Joe Perello says Sedini could just never click socially.
I never met a girlfriend. I never met a friend.
In an online diary he began last year, frustrated with women, Sedini began planning the murders at the gym.
He just had a lot of hatred in him, and he was hell-bent on committing this act, and there was nobody going to stop him.
Police say Sedini, with 4 handguns, walked into the aerobics classroom Tuesday night and fired more than 30 shots, killing 46-year-old Heidi Overmeyer, a single mom and active in the First United Methodist Church of Bridgeville. 37-year-old Jody Billingsley, a gardener and described as a fitness buff. And 49-year-old Betsy Gannon, a longtime resident of the area who worked at a local hospital. Her friends are in disbelief.
She can't be gone. You know, it can't happen that way.
You know, you couldn't ask for a better friend. I don't know what I'm going to do without her.
In a note left at the scene, Sedini complains he never spent a weekend with a girl, never lived with a woman, and only had sex a few times.
Just got some intel from one of our units on scene. Hit the 3rd floor and there's people trapped on the 4th.
The pilot behind this twisted suicide mission was 53-year-old Joe Stack, a software engineer with a grudge against the IRS. Records show 2 software companies he started had been suspended by a state tax board. Thursday morning, federal investigators say Stack used his single-engine plane as the ultimate weapon. But first, he burned down the home he shared with his wife and daughter, who reportedly left Wednesday night after an argument. Then Stack headed to the airport, where he topped off his plane with fuel. They suspect to maximize damage on impact. At 9:40 a.m., he took off for the short trip to the office building he targeted.
He was coming in and he was kind of swooping in.
16 minutes later, he crashed full speed into the lowest 3 floors of that building. No accident. Those floors were the offices of nearly 200 employees of the IRS.
And the roof came in and felt like stuff fell on top of us. All kinds of stuff fell on top of us. I jumped underneath the desk, and then another explosion went off. So that's when we went out the backside door.
Not everyone made it out. Some were trapped on the 2nd floor. Stack's suicide flight killed only himself and 1 federal employee. He had much grander plans, according to a rambling 6-page note left on a website registered to Stack. It lists Thursday as the day of his death and details his years of conflict with tax collectors. I am finally ready to stop this insanity. Well, Mr. Big Brother IRS man, let's try something different. Take my pound of flesh and sleep well.
Nine members of a Michigan-based Christian militia group have been charged in connection with an alleged plot to spark a war against the federal government. On Monday, the Justice Department said the group, known as the Hootery, planned on killing a law enforcement officer and then bombing the funeral procession. According to the indictment, Hootery members hoped the funeral attack would weaken law enforcement morale ahead of a full-scale uprising against the government. 8 members of the group were arrested over the weekend in raids in Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana. Prosecutors say Houthari members have trained in weaponry and bomb making since at least 2008. Video posted on YouTube shows armed Houthari members conducting military-like training exercises. The individuals in the videos are dressed in full combat gear and carry weapons. In one video, they burn the flag of the United Nations before hoisting their own flag in its place. Part of the group's website reads, quote, "Jesus wanted us to be ready to defend ourselves using the sword."
The nearly year-long investigation ended here with a shootout on this mountainside in rural North Oklahoma. Shot and killed Sandon Matthew Smith, wanted for bombing the Florida mosque in May of last year. The FBI says extensive interviews and search warrants over the weekend led them to issue an arrest warrant for Smith. And over the last 3 days, they were able to track Smith to Oklahoma.
Due to the nature of the charges, we felt that he was considered an armed and dangerous individual.
And agents say Smith was indeed armed when they approached him around 1:30 in the afternoon. Smith was wanted on a list of charges for the May 10th bombing of the Islamic Center of Northeast Florida.
It fits in all kinds of situations. Doesn't matter what we're talking about. Traffic ticket, IRS, mortgage, credit card, hospital bill, child support, whatever it is. Okay?
By 2009, Jerry Kane's self-confidence and trademark white jacket could only mask reality. In truth, he was flat broke. His debt elimination seminars were a bust. As a sovereign citizen, Kane didn't carry a driver's license. His car was registered to a bogus charity. Traffic stops led to arrests. And with each one, Jerry Kane's anger towards authority deepened.
I don't want to have to kill anybody. But if they keep messing with me, that's what it's going to have to come out. That's what it's going to come down to, is I'm going to have to kill. And if I have to kill one, then I'm not going to be able to stop.
Absorbing it all was Kane's 16-year-old son, Joe, homeschooled and raised on sovereign ideology.
Who all here has been to school?
Long time.
Joe's on. So you know what it means when I say take one and pass it back?
Yeah. May 20th, 2010, the Kane's minivan was pulled over on I-40 by 2 West Memphis, Arkansas police officers. A dashboard camera captured what happened next. Kane got out of the van. He appeared argumentative. Instead of a license, he handed over a document declaring his sovereignty. The officers seemed confused by it. Then, a scuffle. Young Joe Kane jumped from the van and began firing an AK-47. 58 seconds later, as the Kanes prepared to flee, the teenager fired 4 more times. A truck driver called 911.
Hello, 111, where is your emergency? Exit 275 on 40. These guys just shot a police officer right on the exit.
I heard a call go out on my radio. 2 officers down at the mile marker 275.
West Memphis Police Chief Bob Powder, that's him in the white shirt, was among the first to arrive. One officer lay motionless on the roadway. A second was in a ditch. Fellow cops came to his aid.
And they kept saying, Bill, you're going to be okay. Bill, you're going to be okay. Well, I knew then it was Bill Evans. And I ran down the hill to Bill. He was wounded very badly. And as I started up the incline, a sergeant was there, and he stopped me. He said, Chief, please don't go up there. I said, is it Brandon? He said, yes.
Brandon is Sergeant Brandon Powder, the chief's 39-year-old son.
I went up there, and Brandon was lying on his back with his gun still in his right hand, clutch in his hand.
Brandon Powder died instantly from a bullet to the head. Bill Evans was declared dead at a hospital. They had taken 25 bullets between them. The police cornered Jerry and Joe Kane 90 minutes later. The Kanes wounded 2 more lawmen before they were killed in a Walmart parking lot.
Byron Williams wanted to start a revolution by killing people at the ACLU and the Tides Foundation. Williams was apparently targeting those groups because of their civil rights agendas.
The Tides Foundation, which police say was one of the targets of Byron Williams, was the topic of conversation many days on Glenn Beck's Fox Cable News show. Williams' mother had said that many times he would become angry after hearing about leftist organizations on the news.
This audience know whose Tides is. Tides Foundation is with Soros. It all ties to the Tides Center. They are also involved in some of the nastiest of the nasty. I mean, did you notice some of the names involved here, especially the Tides Foundation? Tides Foundation, gee, we know them because they bailed out Acorn.
The Tides Foundation is a major source of revenue for some of the most extreme groups on the left.
There are people and forces behind some of these things, and it is a completely dishonorable debate. George Soros' people at the Tides Foundation come up with $1 million just to make that problem go away. Infiltrating, gain control of big businesses. What do you think the Tides Foundation is?
They're being taught capitalism is evil. Videos like this one are being played in classrooms, made by the George Soros-funded Tides Foundation.
What do you think the Tides Foundation was? They infiltrated. He states in this book, the purpose is to create mass organizations to seize power. Wow, that almost sounds like the Tides Foundation. If I had an idea that I cloaked and made it a Trojan horse, I'd be a nut job or a conspiracy theorist. But when they have a Trojan horse, no, they're not called that. They're called members of the Tides Foundation.
It seemed like just another customer for Don Group, owner of the Midway Self-Storage in Cumberland County, a man in his mid-60s renting a storage unit. But this situation was all but ordinary.
We never thought no more about it because people come and go and we treat them all nice.
Turns out Group was renting a unit to 64-year-old Raymond Peak III. Peak, seen here on surveillance camera video at the storage facility, is accused of killing attorney Todd Getchin at a gun range on July 21st. According to court documents, Peak stole Getchin's gun after the homicide and stored the AR-15 along with 2 other guns inside this unit. Peak was arrested on Friday after eyewitnesses put him at the homicide scene and a search of the unit turned up the weapons.
Federal investigators arrest 37-year-old Donnie Maurer. He's accused of trying to torch a Planned Parenthood clinic in Madera and placing signs at several other locations with the letters ANB, or American Nationalist Brotherhood. CBS 47's Steve McCarran is live in Madera County with the latest. Steve?
Well, Zara, Maurer was arrested by the FBI at his home in Madera yesterday. That announcement came here about 2 hours ago outside of the Madera Islamic Center during a press conference held with several law enforcement agencies. His arrest is tied to a string of vandalism that dates back to August of last year when someone placed 3 signs outside of the center here that all had the acronym ANB, or American Nationalist Brotherhood, on them. A brick was also thrown at the center's front office window. Sometime later, someone tried to torch the Planned Parenthood clinic in Madera with a Molotov cocktail. Signs were also placed at the Madera Courthouse and at the Sheriff's Department headquarters off of Road 28.
A North Carolina man will appear in court today on charges he was planning to blow up a Planned Parenthood clinic that performed abortions. According to an affidavit filed by the FBI, the fit 26-year-old Justin Carroll Moose described himself as a, quote, Christian counterpart of Osama bin Laden.
One might wonder what kind of man would shoot 3 people. But while we learn about White as explained in his own words, the man behind the standoff begins to emerge. At times disoriented, at times passionate, White discussed his upbringing around guns and said that while he was in the armed services, he never fought in Vietnam. White said point blank that he had fun shooting at the tanks. White also said that at one point, he just wanted authorities to finish him off. According to Mustian, he does not appear to be against Sheriff Mark Donaldson personally, but he did admit distaste for the government and law enforcement as a whole.
death panels where bureaucrats might deny care to the elderly or infirm.
What she has called death panels.
Specter of death panels.
The death panels.
Death panels.
So-called death panels.
Death panels. Death panels.
Death panels.
Our senior's going to be in front of a death panel.
The death panels.
Death panels. And death panels may in fact be not too far off on the horizon.
Hurry up and die.
The deather part of this bill?
The whole thing's still a death panel?
The whole system is in fact a kind of death panel.
Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel.
Zeke Emanuel is on my death list. Hold the applause. I'm going to be on the death panel.
There's a difference between a living will and a dying will.
Cost-benefit analysis for grandma.
You've lived a good life. You don't want to be a burden to your children.
No, you can't have that bypass surgery.
Tell people when they can live and when they can die.
Puts a discount on the lives of elderly people.
There's going to be more funerals for old people.
If she's 84, out of here.
I don't think we should ever.
Out of here.
Oh, and it reduces everyone's life down to a balance sheet.
And virtually given a death sentence.
This is devaluing of human life.
Have you ever heard anyone say, if I'm a vegetable, pull the plug?
A controversy that is brewing around what's being called the death book.
The death books for veterans.
The death book.
So-called death books.
Telling veterans that maybe they should be euthanized. Promotes pulling the plug on our brave veterans.
And some would say even steer veterans at the end of their life to pulling the plug.
Now the Democrats are playing the death card again, wrapping their wildly unpopular health care bill in the sentimental gauze of Ted Kennedy's memory.
They're playing the death card.
Kind of an obsession with death.
When will someone in the media expose all of the lies?
Arizona Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords is one of at least 10 members of Democratic leaders, who Democratic leaders say have been targeted because of their vote on health care.
Sometime between midnight and 2 a.m., we were alerted that the front door of our office, which is a glass panel door, had been either kicked out, shot out, or just basically destroyed. The rhetoric and firing people up and, even things, for example, we're on Sarah Palin's targeted list, but the thing is that the way that she has it depicted has the crosshairs of a gun sight over our district. And when people do that, they've got to realize there's consequences to that action.
We are cutting into our program with some breaking news. We're being told by various sources, both NPR as well as a local Tucson newspaper, that Arizona Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords has been shot.
This YouTube video begins with a simple, quiet introduction. It's one of 5 videos posted in recent weeks by the young man accused in the Arizona shootings. The videos are the closest thing we have to an interview with Jared Loughner. They represent the culmination of his apparent descent into madness. The majority of citizens in the United States of America have never read the United States of America's Constitution. You don't have to accept the Federalist laws. I can't trust the current government because of the ratifications. The government is implying mind control and brainwash on the people by controlling grammar. This situation is fraud because the police are unconstitutional.
There was a lot of books and movies that were brought into play that he introduced, to either my son and then ultimately to the rest of the family. Things that I would have never, even heard about or watched. And things like Loose Change, about the 9/11 conspiracy, that it was a government, false flag operation. He watched things like that.
I think that anyone who didn't connect to his lines of thinking, he had disdain for.
His friends say Loughner's lines of thinking intersected with conspiracy theories, that government controls people's minds and U.S. currency is worthless. His only known meeting with Giffords was 3 years and 4 months before the assassination attempt. When police searched Loughner's home, they found a form letter from Giffords thanking him for attending. On the envelope, he wrote, "Die, bitch."
Kevin Hartman confessed in court today to building and planting a pipe bomb in downtown Spokane on January 17th. He admitted placing it inside a backpack along the route of the city's annual MLK Day March. The march and its 2,000 participants were diverted after the bomb was discovered, and it was disabled before it was detonated. Court documents say the bomb was a 6-inch pipe filled with 128 fishing weights laced with rat poison. It was rigged with a remote car starter alarm so it could be triggered from a distance. He even took pictures of himself and his intended targets at the city's annual Unity March. Court documents say the FBI found Hartman because he bought the fishing weights at the Colville Walmart with his bank card. Prosecutors say the FBI also found Hartman's DNA on the backpack handle. Investigators also found hundreds of racist comments made by Hartman on a white supremacist website, and court documents say Hartman wanted to detonate the bomb at the Unity March to further his racist beliefs.
We have no obligation to submit to a government that refuses to submit to their governing document.
This individual's name is Ralph Lang. Employees at a Motel 6 in Madison, Wisconsin called police after he told them he accidentally fired a gun in his room, according to a criminal complaint that was provided to the Wisconsin State Journal. He also went on to tell police department officers that he bought the gun in 2009 to, quote, lay out abortionists because they are killing babies. Lang told the officer he wanted to find the abortion doctor at the local Planned Parenthood clinic and shoot him in the head. He was asked if he was only going to shoot the doctor or also the nurses, and he said, I wish I could line them all up in a row, get a machine gun and mow them all down. He also said he was in Wisconsin a week earlier, but he didn't murder anyone then because he realized he was not 100% in sync with God.
So it was when he became 100% in sync with God that the murdering could...
On his subsequent trip, he was in sync with God and was ready to commit the murders, but he accidentally fired the gun in his Motel 6 room.
New information on a story we've been following closely for you. Federal indictments announced this morning against 32-year-old David Pedersen and 25-year-old Holly Ann Grigsby. It's a long string of charges, and they all stem from an alleged 10-day crime spree that spanned from Everett, Washington to Eureka, California, and included 4 murders.
Well, David Pedersen pleaded guilty to murdering his father and stepmother today. He's expected to be sentenced to life in prison later this week. After those murders, investigators say Pedersen and his girlfriend Holly Ann Grigsby headed to Oregon. That's where they're suspected of crossing paths with 19-year-old Cody Myers. He lived in Lafayette, Oregon, but was attending a jazz festival near the Oregon coast. Myers later turned up dead from multiple gunshot wounds. Pedersen's girlfriend, Holly Grigsby, she's also been charged in the Everett murders, but the decision about whether to seek the death penalty for her is pending. The 2 defendants also accused of killing 53-year-old Reginald Clark near Eureka, California, saying they did it because he was black.
Got me puzzled. Around 2 p.m. Tuesday, a total of 70 federal and state agents raided the homes of Samuel Crump, Ray Adams, Dan Roberts in Toccoa, and Frederick Thomas in Cleveland. Federal officials described them as members of a fringe militia group. The 4 men in their 60s and 70s were arrested and charged with plotting to attack unnamed government officials and buildings with explosives. According to agents, the men had been talking about a covert operation since at least March of this year. Agents say the men plan to disperse the poison ricin in Atlanta and other cities across the nation by blowing it out of a car while speeding down the interstate.
Isaac Agee was first arrested last December in Georgia, along with 3 others, for the murder of a comrade, 19-year-old Michael Rourke, and his girlfriend, 17-year-old Tiffany York. The 3 other suspects are 25-year-old Sergeant Anthony Peden, 26-year-old Private First Class Michael Burnett, and 25-year-old Private Christopher Salmon. They accuse Agee of ordering the murders to protect his homegrown terrorist group called FEAR, which stands for Forever Enduring, Always Ready, and to keep their plans secret. Those plans, according to prosecutors, include assassinating President Barack Obama, blowing up a dam in Washington state, taking over Fort Stewart, and bombing targets in Savannah, Georgia. Prosecutors told a judge on Monday that Agigi funded the terrorist group through $500,000 he received from a life insurance policy from his pregnant wife's death last year.
We turn now to the Sikh Temple Massacre in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, where 6 worshipers were killed Sunday by Wade Michael Page. He died following the attack from a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
Civil rights groups say they tracked Page for more than a decade as he moved through skinhead circles, most prominently as the lead of a white power rock group called End Apathy.
Down to the trying times, or pay with your life.
The music is an incredibly violent genre of rock and roll, and boiled down to a word, it's genocide.
In the last year, Page was connected to a supremacist group called the Hammerskins Nation.
Hammerskins for many years were the most feared people on the white supremacist scene out there.
A native of Colorado, Page enlisted in the Army at age 21 and was part of a psychological warfare unit at Fort Bragg. The Army says he was discharged in 1998 after being demoted from sergeant to specialist and deemed ineligible for re-enlistment.
I was woke by the gunshots this morning.
A rude awakening for neighbors, fellow deputies, and more importantly, families whose lives have changed forever.
I lost 2 good officers today.
Husband and father of 5, 34-year-old Brandon Nielsen had been with the St. John Sheriff's Office nearly 2 years. 27-year-old Jeremy Trish, a 4-year veteran, he leaves behind his wife and 2-year-old son. It started around 5 this morning in the Valero parking lot when police say a gunman opened fire on Deputy Jason Trish, hitting him and his car multiple times. Deputies then followed a speeding vehicle to this trailer park.
As we were interviewing the 2 suspects, another person exited that trailer with an assault weapon and ambushed. Ambushed by 2 officers.
Authorities are releasing vital details about the people arrested in connection with the violent shootings. DeSoto Parish officials say some in the group were on their radar before Thursday's shootout. They say they were part of the Sovereign Citizens movement. The FBI classifies sovereign citizens as people who believe they are free from all U.S. citizens' duties, like paying taxes. They've also been linked to violent anarchists on the FBI's domestic terrorism watch list. But as the investigation continues, loved ones are still reeling from a deadly shooting rampage.
Federal prosecutors say Anton Kaluri sent an email to a general government address threatening to kill President Obama. When a federal agent and a Federal Way police officer arrived at his apartment today, police say Kaluri opened the door armed with a shotgun. The law enforcement officers were able to grab the gun and safely arrest Kaluri. They confiscated 2 weapons. Police say when Kaluri told them there were explosives in the apartment, they called in the bomb squad and evacuated neighbors. Chopper 7 was overhead for that search. Police will only tell us they safely cleared the apartment, and we never saw them remove anything dangerous.
In 2012, an FBI raid uncovered a full arsenal of assault rifles, firearms, body armor, and ammunition amassed by the suspect, whom prosecutors later determined was planning to carry out mass killings. But the suspect is not a radical Muslim. He's a white supremacist. His name is Richard Schmidt, Federal authorities say he was planning targeted attacks on African Americans and Jews. Investigators found a list of names and addresses of people to be assassinated, including the leaders of the NAACP chapters in Michigan and Ohio. Schmidt was sentenced to less than 6 years in prison after a federal judge said prosecutors had failed to adequately establish he was a political terrorist. He's scheduled for release next year, February of 2018.
This is exactly how it started in Europe. Immigration, allowing them to come in carte blanche to European countries in the 60s to allow them to work. They stayed. Their kids are becoming radicalized. We are at risk of the same thing.
Well, the minority becoming the majority at one community pool. Sharia law is now changing everything. A YMCA in Minneapolis, St. Paul is starting a swim group for Muslim girls, but special considerations have to be made to keep with their religious beliefs.
These people live to kill us. They live to attack us. They live to horrify us. And when people pull back, that's exactly what they want.
Therefore, I think that we ought to be very selective in allowing any Muslim or future Chinese students in here.
Hans and Sven are not on the FBI's most wanted list.
So they looked at the Quran and said, grab a meat cleaver and hack somebody up? Fantastic.
I think it's time for profiling, though, don't you, Ange? I think it's time for profiling because
the
profile has been Middle Eastern Muslims who have blown people up or attempted to blow people up over the last 15 years.
Let me make it clear. I don't have a problem with profiling. I think Pete King, the congressman who's the head of the House Terror Subcommittee, when he talks about that the police have to get in and infiltrate the Muslim community, I completely agree with that.
I think that we should be able to put in listening devices in there. Is that possible? No.
No Muslim students coming here with visas. No more mosques being built here until you stand up and denounce what's happened in the name of your prophet.
They're openly telling us they want to take over the country. They're openly committing treason. They're openly Islamifying areas. And it has to end. And that's what we're saying. It's like you don't keep adding to the problem.
Well,
but, yeah.
Well, Tommy, we got your back, and we'll definitely look to keep in touch. And I really think it's it's great what you're doing.
If we burn down your mosque here, you'd be really upset.
Tonight we're getting our first look at undercover videos that FBI agents took while investigating a Saratoga County man who was trying to build a death ray to massacre Muslims.
What do you suppose you could accomplish with a defensive weapon that can kill from a considerable distance, day or night, through walls, without making a sound, leaving a wound that cannot be sensed that takes 2 weeks to kill you?
That is Glendon Scott Crawford at a hotel in North Carolina.
This could kill whole cities in a night, silently.
Explaining his plan to men he thought were members of the KKK.
It would be weeks before anybody had any inkling that anything was wrong, and they probably dropped dead in their beds.
Crawford wanted help and money to execute the death ray.
The only thing it won't kill is trees.
And shortly after this meeting, he started putting the plan in motion, gathering parts, software, meeting with a man in a Schenectady hotel room to look at small tubes for the would-be weapon.
Because what we would have to do, we'd have to set up the power supply for it.
In June of 2013, Crawford met undercover agents at a warehouse in Scatticoke where he supplied them with a remote control radio he said would activate the device.
We may have to swap out this whole timer.
And that's when this happened. Crawford was found guilty of attempting to acquire and use a radiological dispersal device and conspiring to use a weapon of mass destruction.
We would never minimize the threat of, Islamic terrorism in this country.
Sure.
9/11 is, the Pearl Harbor of our generation. At the same time, there have been many more right-wing plots than there have been Islamic plots since that period of time.
Authorities have charged David Allen Brucci, age 42, and Devon Campbell Newman, age 67, with attempted murder. Investigators say both plan to follow police cars. Then, if an officer made a traffic stop, the two would take the policeman away to be tied up and ultimately killed.
I feel that they are going far beyond what the Constitution allows. I'm in jail because the government with undercover agents wants me here.
Authorities say an undercover policeman took them to a house where they began building their own jail. They're said to be members of the Sovereign Citizens Movement, whose members have been known to kill police before.
A man from Joplin pled guilty to setting a fire that destroyed a mosque and attempting to burn down a Planned Parenthood clinic in Joplin. 32-year-old Jedediah Stout pled guilty to 1 count of damage to the Islamic Society of Joplin Mosque, 2 counts of arson at a Planned Parenthood facility in Joplin, and 1 count of violating the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act.
Paul Ciancia walked into Terminal 3 at LAX on Friday, pulled out a gun and started shooting. He injured several people, including 3 officers from the Transportation Security Agency. One of them was Gerardo Hernandez, who was checking passenger IDs at the time. In the chaos that followed, Ciancia headed up the escalator. Then he saw Gerardo Hernandez move, so he went back and killed him.
Shortly after the rampage, police say they found a 1-page letter in Ciancia's bag. It said he targeted TSA agents to, quote, instill fear in your traitorous minds, and also mentioned NWO, or New World Order. That's a century-old conspiracy theory, according to Mark Potok, who tracks extremist groups.
Basically identifies the federal government as an evil malefactor that is involved in a conspiracy to force the United States into a so-called one world government, known as the New World Order.
People who believe this theory are deeply suspicious of international organizations such as the United Nations and think the government plans a national seizure of all guns.
They believe that the federal government intends to impose martial law on the country any moment now, that martial law will be imposed with the aid of foreign troops, probably UN blue helmets.
Online talk shows perpetuate these anti-government views.
Federal security goon force?
And often mention TSA officers.
Frazier Glenn Miller, also known as Frazier Glenn Cross, has been charged with capital murder for killing 14-year-old Reet Underwood and his grandfather, William Corcoran, outside a Jewish community center Sunday. He also faces a first-degree murder charge for killing Terry Lamanno, who was visiting her mother at a nearby retirement complex. Miller's a notorious white supremacist who'd openly railed against Jews and African Americans for decades. He's the founder and former Grand Dragon of the paramilitary-style Carolina Knights of the Ku Klux Klan.
But I do apologize for those who died. And I thought they were Jews. I wouldn't have shot them otherwise.
If I had my way, they'd all be in jail right now for treason, if not hung from a sturdy oak tree.
Were Jews
dominate, own virtually every one of them. Ron Paul is the only independent politician representative in Washington.
Do you think the U.S. would be better off today if Hitler had succeeded?
Oh, absolutely. The whole world would.
Wow.
Not only white people, but the entire Gentile population of the world.
Hi, Elliot Roger here. Well, this is my last video. It all has to come to this. Tomorrow is the day of retribution. The day in which I will have my revenge against humanity. Girls gave their affection and sex and love to other men, but never to me. I'm 22 years old and I'm still a virgin. I've never even kissed a girl. I've been through college for 2.5 years. More than that, actually. And I'm still a virgin. You girls have never been attracted to me. I don't know why you girls aren't attracted to me, but I will punish you all for it. I don't know what you don't see in me. I'm the perfect guy. And yet you throw yourselves at all these obnoxious men. instead of me, the supreme gentleman. I will punish all of you for it. On the day of retribution, I am going to enter the hottest sorority house of UCSB. And I will slaughter every single spoiled, stuck-up, blonde slut I see inside there. I'll take great pleasure in slaughtering all of you. You will finally see that I am, in truth, the superior one, the true alpha male. Well, now, I will be a god compared to you. You are animals, and I will slaughter you like animals. If I can't have you, girls, I will destroy you. You denied me a happy life, and in turn, I will deny all of you life. If I had it in my power, I would stop at nothing to reduce every single one of you to mountains of skulls and rivers of blood. You deserve to be annihilated. All of you sexually active men, I hate you. I hate all of you. I can't wait to give you exactly what you deserve. Utter annihilation.
The first victims were Elliot Rogers' two roommates, 20-year-old Chung Yuan Hong and 19-year-old George Chen. He killed them in his apartment along with 20-year-old Wei Hong Wang. Roger also took the lives of 22-year-old Catherine Cooper and 19-year-old Veronica Weiss, who were members of the Tri Delta sorority. A security camera captured the chaotic scene inside a campus deli where 20-year-old Chris Michael Martinez stopped to buy dinner. He was the last person killed.
Investigators described Jared and Amanda Miller as anti-government and on a mission to kill police officers. The couple entered this pizzeria around 11:30 yesterday and shot officers Igor Soldo and Alan Beck at point-blank range. The Millers then covered the bodies with a swastika and a Gadsden flag, first used in the American Revolution, emblazoned with the words, "Don't tread on me." Las Vegas Assistant Sheriff Kevin McCahill.
Mr. Jared Miller then pinned a note to Officer Saldo that basically stated that this is the beginning of the revolution.
The Millers then walked to a Walmart a block away. Jared Miller fired his handgun and ordered shoppers out. He was confronted by Joseph Wilcox, a shopper who was carrying a concealed weapon.
As soon as he began to confront Jared Miller with his firearm, Amanda Miller removed her firearm and shot him one time in the ribs area, and where he immediately collapsed.
The couple barricaded themselves in the back of the Walmart and had a gunfight with SWAT teams. It ended when Amanda Miller shot her husband and then herself.
Sorry to say, guys, but none of us really stand any kind of chance of living maybe past 50, 60 years old. What are you going to do about it? Huh? I'm just going to sit around, oh, well, nothing I can't do about it. There are things we can do about it. Just got to be willing.
All right, you're arguing? We're taking your children to this area. They're getting shot. Sir, America's in trouble. We're just trying to do our job. This is exactly how it's going to be. He calls a disturbance, send him to Camp 7.
Think of it, a one world order. With me at the head of it. I will be able to take all these FEMA concentration camps and not only imprison Americans, but other dissidents from other countries that don't want to go along with my plans and the New Order's plans to vaccinate you with all these flu shots and hepatitis shots that give you little drops of mercury and causes cancer and infertility.
So we gave 100 million Americans, as estimated, all these new rare cancers in a cocktail of viruses in your polio vaccine, the live vaccine we shoot up kids' noses. What's the big deal, pumpkin? Isn't dying young fun? I mean, these people are assaulting us under common law, ladies and gentlemen. They could all be rounded up and hung. Okay, but they've got Homeland Security geared up to try to keep the clamps down while they murder us slow. They love the fact they're killing you and your family. They enjoy it. And then they'll put you on a helicopter, fly you 100 miles, and there it'll be, you son of a bitch, you want to cause problems? Come here, Jones. Knock your teeth out, you son of a bitch. I used to see your website, and I used to come, die, you son of a bitch. Yeah, we rule America. Hell yeah.
I want to blow up whole countries, whole nations. I want to make everybody submit to one world order governance.
Officer, what's this checkpoint? What's going on? Get out of the car. Hey, officer, I'm not going anywhere. Your papers aren't in order. But that's it. They argued with us. Patriot Act. Patriot Act. Bill, where are you going? The children are crying. Where they're just waiting. And they have those camps all over the world. And they're just waiting, just psychos. The dungeon keepers. And they love it. They love the humiliation. They love the screams of pain. And they would take turns beating. Oh, I love the demonic power. Just seething with hatred, seething with evil. That's their spirit, crushing it. That's who we're facing. Degenerate scumbag filth everywhere, feeding on you and your family. We're going to beat these bastards. They're not going to stop it.
Like an hour ago, you said the government's gang raping us. Now, I mean, you got to tone down your rhetoric, Alex, for real. You've been saying it for years that the government wants
No, the government is gang raping us.
Don't you realize that there's a segment of your listening audience that really is deranged? And when you tell them...
this is a classic talking point, Southern Poverty Law Center, that I am going to cause deranged people to go out and do things. No, the government giving nukes to North Korea could cause World War III. What's funny and why the Joker's laughing all the way to the bank is because the more they abuse you, the more you enjoy it, just like the Stockholm Syndrome. And so that's why the joke is on you.
Back to our top story tonight, the attack in downtown Austin early this morning. Throughout the newscast, we've shown you how the gunman, identified as Steve McWilliams, shot at several government buildings, and that included the Mexican consulate building, sovereign territory of the Republic of Mexico.
Some of the canisters show signs of exploding and catching fire. Bullets surround the street around the front of this now international crime scene. The FBI and Diplomatic Security Service joins Austin PD and Fire in the investigation. On the scene, they worked with Mexican officials. The attack happened around 2:30 a.m.
Investigators released this surveillance video of the shooting today after prosecutors cleared the officer who killed the gunman. The video shows what appears to be an automatic weapon being fired in the direction of APD. Police say Larry McWilliams was the man pulling the trigger. Sergeant Adam Johnson eventually shot and killed McWilliams.
Larry Steve McWilliams is the terrorist who went on a shooting spree last weekend in downtown Austin, Texas. And news broke today that, in fact, he's a Christian terrorist. He's part of a Christian identity movement known as the Phineas Priesthood. They're described as, quote, a Christian identity cult originating in the Pacific Northwest that opposes interracial relationships, homosexuality, and excessive taxation. So Raw Story explains, quote, there are no meetings and membership only entails adopting and acting upon its beliefs, which include murdering gays, interracial couples, and abortion doctors. And then they say this is chilling. As the kamikaze is to the Japanese, so the Phineas Priest is to Christendom. So here we have pretty plainly a Christian version of Al-Qaeda.
Normally, when someone admits in court to plotting a terrorist attack, that person is kept in jail for a long time. But that's not the case with Robert Doggart, a former Tennessee congressional candidate who in April pleaded guilty to planning an attack on Islamburg, a small Muslim community in New York State. Despite all the evidence against him, Doggart has been released into the custody of 2 family members, and judges say they aren't sure that he represents a true threat to the public. Seriously. And this is a guy who was caught on a wire saying that he wouldn't hesitate to use a machete to cut his Muslim victims to shreds. His phrase. Oh, and if that wasn't bad enough, Doggart has yet to actually be charged with terrorism. He only pled guilty to interstate communication of threats. Not surprisingly, many Muslim Americans think that things would be a little different if Robert Doggart was from Pakistan and his name was Omar.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists. They're sending us not the right people. It's coming from more than Mexico. It's coming from all over South and Latin America, and it's coming probably from the Middle East. I am officially running for President of the United States, and we are going to make our country great again. The American dream is dead.